Welcome back to Midnight Signal AI. Today is June 25th, 2026, and the big theme is simple. The frontier labs are all trying to move from chatbots into actual operators.
We've got computer control, custom silicon, ads, workplace agents, and autonomous execution. In other words, the race is no longer just about who answers best. It's about who can do the work inside the stack at scale.
Let's start with the most immediate product shift of the day. Google DeepMind and Gemini taking a real step toward hands-on computer control.
That's the direction everyone expected, but it still matters when a lab like Google puts it into a mainstream model. The interesting part is that computer use is not just another benchmark win. It changes the unit of value from text generation to task completion.
And that's exactly why the timing stands out. Google's own blog points to Gemini 3.5 Flash, while the wider reporting around the same event says Gemini 3.5 Pro is being delayed into July as Google keeps tuning the frontier model. So you've got one part of the stack shipping an agentic feature now, while the premium model gets more polish time.
Which is pretty revealing. It suggests Google wants an everyday, useful capability in front of users quickly, even if the top-end model isn't ready. That's a smart move if the first real buying decision is, can this thing actually operate my computer?
Switching gears, OpenAI had a very different kind of infrastructure story today. Its first custom chip effort, framed around Broadcom and building the full stack.
This is the classic platform move. Once a company starts talking about the full stack, it's usually because the economics at scale are getting real, and OpenAI is clearly looking beyond model quality alone.
There was a second OpenAI thread that feels related, even if it lives on the business side instead of the silicon side. Ads. EasternEye reported UK users seeing ChatGPT ads, while Search Engine Land said OpenAI's ad dismissals have dropped by half as relevance improves. Storyboard 18 also said OpenAI made a Cannes Lions debut to pitch the ads business.
That's a big commercial signal. It says OpenAI isn't just testing monetization, it's actively normalizing ads as part of the ChatGPT experience. And if relevance really is improving, that's the only way ads become tolerable inside a product people treat like software, not social media.
Exactly. The business model is widening in two directions at once: more control over compute and more willingness to monetize user attention. That combination tells you OpenAI is preparing for a much larger, more expensive product surface.
And the can angle matters too, because it shows OpenAI is not hiding the strategy. They're pitching marketers directly now, which means the ad roadmap is becoming a real part of the public narrative, not a side experiment.
Staying with OpenAI, there's another interesting product update. 9to5Mac reported that ChatGPT's most used model was updated again, and Open Magazine says a new audio model is about to listen and talk at the same time.
Voice is one of those features that sounds small until it works well. If ChatGPT can listen and speak in real time, that's a step towards something more like a conversational operating layer than a query box.
And the fact that it's the most used model getting changed again tells me OpenAI is still tuning the center of gravity of the product, not just adding shiny extras, but changing how the core interface behaves.
That's where the moat may end up being, not one feature, but the way all these pieces, ads, audio, chips, and model updates, reinforce the same product ecosystem.
Now to Anthropic, where the headline today is Claude Tag. Tech Republic, Yahoo Tech, and Pulse 2.0 all describe a Slack-native agentic coworker that can participate in team collaboration with broader rollout language attached to the launch.
This feels like Anthropic doing what it does best, positioning Claude as the safe, useful coworker rather than the flashy demo. In a shared workspace, that framing matters a lot more than raw benchmark bragging.
Right, and it also keeps Anthropic close to its enterprise audience. A Slack-native agent can become part of the social fabric of a company, which is much stickier than a standalone chat window.
The big question is whether teams see it as leverage or as another thing talking in channels. That difference decides whether Claude Tag becomes a habit or a novelty.
Speaking of agents doing more than talking, xAI had a pretty direct ship today. Tech Times says Grok build now supports autonomous execution, where the agent plans, runs, and verifies its own work.
Autonomous execution is the right phrase because that's the bar now. Planning is nice, running is useful, verifying is what makes it feel closer to a real teammate instead of a fancy macro.
And it also mirrors the broader market pattern today. Every major lab is trying to own a different piece of the agent stack. Google wants the compute use, Anthropic wants the coworker, OpenAI wants the chip and the interface, and xAI wants the agent that just gets the job done.
That's the through line. The companies are converging on the same destination, but each is taking a different route, and that's where the next few quarters should get interesting.
Last main story, the research layer. We've got 2 archive papers today that point to where evaluation is heading. ReMMD looks at multilingual, multi-image agentic verification for misinformation detection, and T2D Bench adds evidence-gated evaluation for type 2 diabetes outputs.
These aren't flashy launches, but they matter because they define what good means next. If benchmarks start rewarding evidence, provenance, and verification, then the race shifts from sounding smart to proving you're right.
And that lines up with everything else we saw today. The agents are getting more powerful, so the checks around them have to get more serious. Now let's shift gears to robotics, and this one is all about getting legged machines to stop treating stairs like a personal attack. The DynaWM approach tries to make a robot learn not just the next move, but the dynamics underneath the move, how its body, the terrain, and momentum all interact as it climbs. That's a big deal because stair traversal is one of those problems that looks simple to humans and becomes brutally complicated once balance enters the chat. If a policy only copies good actions without understanding why they worked, it can fall apart the moment the staircase changes shape, height, or spacing.
So this is less teach the robot a trick and more teach it a mental model.
Exactly, and that mental model is what makes the difference between a robot that can survive a demo and one that can actually operate in the wild. If these methods scale, we could see more capable delivery bots, inspection robots, and mobility platforms that can handle real buildings instead of just polished test courses.
In other words, fewer awkward stair freeze-ups. Always a win.
Always a win, and a nice reminder that in robotics, the last few inches of elevation can be the hardest part. On the medical front, this one lands squarely in the safety lane. The new benchmark looks at hallucination detection in vision language models used for gastrointestinal endoscopy, which is a much more specific and much more clinically sensitive setting than a usual chest X-ray benchmarks. And that specificity matters. Endoscopy is a live procedural environment where the difference between this looks inflamed and this model is guessing can be enormous. The authors are testing 9 hallucination detection methods across 5 models using a dataset built to reflect real GI diagnostic questions.
So the question is not just whether the model is smart, but whether it knows when it's bluffing.
Exactly. In healthcare, a model that can admit uncertainty is often more useful than one that sounds polished. A benchmark like this helps separate systems that are merely fluent from systems that are actually safe enough to support clinicians.
And that's the kind of evaluation that could quietly shape the next wave of medical AI adoption.
Quietly, but importantly, if these detectors improve, they could become part of the guardrails that keep clinical AI from drifting from helpful assistant to confident hazard. On the hardware side, the latest chatter is that OpenAI is moving deeper into custom silicon, with a chip reportedly nicknamed Jalapeño. That's a spicy name for a very serious move. Designing in-house hardware can give an AI company more control over performance, power draw, and long-term costs. This is really about leverage. When your models are massive and your infrastructure bill is massive with them, the ability to shape the hardware around your own workloads becomes a strategic advantage. It can also reduce dependence on the broader GPU supply chain, which has been one of the defining constraints of the AI boom.
So the chip is not just about speed, it's about owning the stack.
Right, and once a frontier lab starts building its own accelerator path, it signals that silicon is no longer just a vendor business, it's part of the product roadmap.
Which means that competition is shifting from model quality alone to model plus infrastructure.
Exactly, and that makes the hardware race even more interesting because every new custom chip is also a bet on what AI workloads will look like a year or two from now. And to end on a lighter note, we have the very modern spectacle of ChatGPT being asked to predict SpaceX's stock price by the end of 2026. It's the kind of story that says as much about us as it does about the model.
Humans do love turning AI into a fortune teller.
We really do. It's a funny reminder that these systems now sit at the center of not just work and research, but speculation, fandom, and a little bit of wishful thinking, too. The forecast itself may be the least important part.
The real headline is that everyone wants a peek behind the curtain.
Exactly. And sometimes the curtain is just a chatbot trying its best, while the rest of us try to turn probability into prophecy.
Across today's stories, a few things stand out. First, the frontier labs are all pushing beyond chat into action, whether that means computer use, Slack coworkers, autonomous execution, or custom silicon underneath it all. Second, monetization is getting more explicit, especially for OpenAI. And third, the safety and evaluation work is trying to catch up with the speed of product shipping. The next phase of AI is looking less like a model race and more like an operating system race.
That's the signal for today. We'll keep tracking which of these bets actually sticks and which ones become tomorrow's cautionary tale. That's your signal. See you next time.